Welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of the Functional Firefighter Framework podcast. We finally got this thing off the ground and up and running. My name is Nick.
Tony.
And we are both professional firefighters and finally wanted to start our own nonprofit. So in this episode, we're basically going to explain what the Firefighter Framework is, where it came from, everything that we have decided to kind of move forward within the fire organization. Anything there that you, as far as, no? Nothing? Okay. All right. We're just so excited to get into the juice and meats of it all. So just really quick, the Firefighter Framework is a nonprofit organization in which we will consult with fire departments around the country and take the earnings from that profit and purchase technology, educational courses, and other things to better the physical well-being of the fire service. Which leads us right into our mission statement. The mission statement of the Functional Firefighter Framework is to provide an ecosystem for firefighters to thrive from recruitment through retirement. With that being said, let's quickly dive into some self-introduction stuff. You guys can get to know a little bit more about us, where we come from, born and raised, all that good stuff, and what got us here to this point. So, Tony, run us a little through your bio, if you will.
Okay, so my name's Anthony Klinker. Everybody calls me Tony or Klink. I grew up all over, but graduated high school down in Florida. Went to school at the University of Missouri on a football scholarship. Played football. Graduated in 2005. Started in the fire service pretty shortly thereafter. About January of 2007 is when I started working for Jefferson City, Missouri. They gave me my start in the fire service and just finished up my master's in education of counseling psychology with an emphasis in positive coaching and athletic leadership. So
cool. Was Jefferson City the place that you said where you would basically walk across the street to take your...
Oh yeah. So I was on I was really lucky. I guess kind of just I got into that master's program because I wanted to know what made good leadership. Right? We've all had amazing leaders, and it's hard to put a spec or an identifier on what made them a good leader, right? And I actually in Jeff City I had quite a few good leaders and captains and chiefs that promoted education where that wasn't necessarily in the SOPs. I had a chief that was huge on training and a captain that would let me take a brush truck across the street to the state fire marshal, and I would hammer out classes on shift, which might have been a little bend in the rules, but what a great investment into your people, right? Somebody who's willing to take a bunch of classes, might as well let them do it on duty, especially when they can probably hear the tones from the classroom. So I was pretty lucky at that point,
for sure, early
in my career to just take a bunch of education, because once you think you know it all in the fire service is when you need to hang it up. There's something to learn at every turn.
And not to go off on a tangent, because I have a feeling, sorry, you guys, I have a feeling that this is going to happen a lot during these episodes. Do you feel that we noticed that? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking for us specifically, and many other firemen out there that played sports growing up in multiple sports, having different styles of coaching, where we noticed that as adults, but even as kids, you're like, I don't really like that coach. I don't know why, but that coach gets it. This one doesn't.
And I think that absolutely. I think I went to the University of Missouri. I graduated high school in Plantation, Florida. I had, maybe a half dozen offers to go play football. I chose University of Missouri because the offensive line coach that was there, who is now the head coach of Arkansas, Sam Pittman. I went to the University of Missouri because of that man, right? So I think that there is something about individuals and their ability to reach people and it's really centered around authenticity, but then it's also centered around the ability to provide an environment in which people feel safe and they can grow and their needs are met, right?
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that who's a leader.
And what's funny, and I hope we get into this later, is because my initial thought is there's the coaches that stand out to me the most. One of them was my defensive coordinator in high school, and the other was my basketball coach my sophomore year of high school. I didn't really like it first. They kind of jerks,
Yeah.
hard, held you accountable, and I didn't like it. And then once you see what it produces on the back end, you're like, oh, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the same people that he doesn't like because they're lazy, don't want to grow, don't want to watch film, don't want to continue to learn.
Well, that's an adaptation phase too, right? Like I'm sure the coaches, one of the most influential people I've had in my life was one of my high school coaches, and I didn't like him at first either because he challenged the hell out of me, right? And after I saw that change, then I would have jumped in front of a train for that man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But at first you're challenged and you're trying to learn, and that environment's new to you, and it's not comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all crave comfort.
It's kind of how I feel right now.
Yeah. You crave comfort, and that's the problem is the everything's so comfortable now that we don't really know hardships. That's first world problems, right?
Yeah.
So but when you're challenged and you're uncomfortable, in a new position, Nick here's seconds away from becoming a captain. There's going to be things that that you can do. It's just going to be uncomfortable the first time you do it, and then after you do it, like the first fire you pumped, as an engineer, right? That's uncomfortable.
Yeah. For sure.
And then you're like, oh, I got this.
Yeah.
But that's the same way with leadership. You might reach somebody that's super hard, has high expectations, and challenges you. And at first, it's not comfortable and it's hard and you're sore and you don't get it and you're getting yelled at. But then all of a sudden, it clicks and you're like, oh, I get what he was doing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. That's gonna be fun. We'll touch on here in a second, kind of the topics that the framework is built around. And let's quickly go over.
Oh, you didn't do your little introduction.
Oh, sorry, my little introduction. Nick Rhodes, currently an engineer, as Tony had mentioned. Been in the fire service now 9 years. Was actually born into the fire service, so I've kind of seen it. My dad was a captain, retired after 30 years of service, along with my uncle. Now me and my brother are in the fire service, so it's like a lot of us, a legacy thing. So for me, went to college, played football my whole life, ended up going to college playing football, the University of Nevada. Ended up getting my master's degree in business information systems. Wasn't really sure at that time still what I'd wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to go into the fire service, but how can I contribute once I got there was kind of my focus and goal. So when I went into information systems, I initially just worked on reducing response times with dispatch, working with Logitech and a few other softwares to be able to get our response times down. I don't know why I'm drawing a brain fart on the name of the company, but anywho, so went from there. Ended up coming right to town. Got lucky. I will say I was extremely lucky. I was hired pretty fast after I took 2 tests, and then from there, decided to teach a few fire academies. Me and Tony actually taught an academy together, and then decided to further my education and get my doctorate in public policy, which I just focus primarily on the infrastructure supporting firefighter health, whether that's revised statutes in each state, which what's mandatory, what's not, and we'll go into a lot of what's covered by different states and who's the most successful at it. And there'll be some verbiage you'll hear us talk about as far as things being punitive, mandatory, non-punitive, things that are incentivized. That's kind of my alley, and where I live is trying to figure out, back to the accountability deal with the coaching and stuff. How do you hold individuals accountable for their own good, yet providing them the infrastructure and the resources to succeed, because they go hand in hand. So I'll be done with my doctorate here in May. May 13th we graduate. February 8th or so I submit everything for final approval. So
what exactly is your doctorate in?
it is a doctorate in public policy focused in firefighter health.
How many of you are there?
As far as I know, I'm the only one. There might be others, because it takes someone different, and just that the public policy individuals that are in the public policy realm. All of my classmates are working on homelessness, affordable housing, infrastructure, water shortage. Where I'm like, hey, how about a valuable resource that is completely overlooked,
Oh yeah.
to where individuals don't really look at it and until you notice how much it's published in our world. So the goal was to merge them together, which was ironic because when we went to the NSCA conference in San Antonio. And as we're there, we're having a great time. We're like, wow, we're not crazy. Like, there's other people like us out there, which we'll go into why the podcast is now existence, because it kind of was born from that conference. But as we're there, we notice that the National Fire Chiefs Association is having their conference in the same city on the same weekend.
They booted us out of the hotel that we were supposed to have.
They did. They moved. They go, actually, you guys, we weren't supposed to be in this hotel. We were down there, and the Chiefs moved us to this one. And that kind of just drove home that I had found my home, my niche of, wait a minute, because individuals will tell me, and I'm sure you all the time, oh, you have your master's, you're going to be a chief, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, this is for us. We have to figure out how we speak their language, but yet still bring the information from the NSCA conference to the Chiefs conference. And we had joked about we should switch buildings for a day, make them come learn how to manage their primary asset, and we'll go learn what they're worried about.
Yeah.
So it was just very interesting because you have a building full of tactical athletes, military, every branch of the military.
Yeah, it was a meathead TED Talk.
Yep, exactly.
4 days of it, so it was good.
And that's usually where, how do you marry the two? Is you got SOPs, degrees on one side, and then you have essentially meatheads and people who
like practical application,
love what we do functionally.
Right.
How do you make it come together? So hopefully when I hear public policy in a area that focuses in firefighter framework, how do I take the person that is the physical therapist that understands body composition and the importance of mobility and put it on paper so that the chief understands it? So that's the goal. So that's my little intro. So what we'll be covering, just so everyone knows, since we were recently just talking about the conference, there was a gentleman there that was on stage that had basically challenged us to do this. If we weren't comfortable with public speaking, or doing a podcast or doing radio, he said just start a podcast. And I don't know if you can tell, I'm uncomfortable. Okay, so it's odd, but I think once we get and we get to the point where we're just communicating and we have these conversations with each other every day,
pretty much.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So really quickly, we'll go through what we're going to touch on, what the framework works on, and I'm going to work on stop saying really quickly because I notice I keep saying that, little habits. So what we'll be covering, what will be covered are tools for recruitment, such as, I know, Clint, this is your realm.
We have a guy that works for us who went to a conference in Dallas. It was an EMS conference, and they talked about how we're missing the mark recruiting now because millennials and Gen Zers have so much access to technology that they know what they want to be early in life, where the Gen Xers and even the baby boomers, they didn't have all this access to the world. So they didn't know. So a big piece of what he took from that conference was that you need to start planting the seed super young, right? And not just taking like a fire engine, like to a middle school and squirting water.
That's what I was going to say. So when you say super young, high school, middle school, elementary, what do you?
Elementary, middle school. Like once they're in high school, they've been, and I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's not what it used to be. Not like I remember at my high school in Florida, the military was there all the time. Like you knew who the recruiters were. I was a 3,500, student high school.
Yeah.
It's a huge, graduating classes of like 700, right? 800. So you're looking at all these potential candidates to feed the machine, right? Yeah. And that's what the fire service is. We need souls every day. And I don't know, across the country, it seems like they're having an issue getting boots on the floor.
What you would think that seeing it in a full, I mean, it's a full national, it might be a global issue, I don't know.
Yeah.
To where you hear the guys go, I was outside. I had had to be handwritten or whatever, and you had to wait in line outside of HR. I thank God had missed that bus a little. My first test was at the Texas, which was now torn down. But there was rows of tables. It wasn't a national test you can take anywhere on the computer.
I tested. I got on relatively fast with Jefferson City, Missouri, and then I tested. I don't even want to know how many places. Like, I remember I tested in Houston once, and it was like I was like one of 3 written test sessions with like thousands and thousands of people.
And how many did they take?
Oh, I don't know.
Because that's always because even then you're like they did 3,000 people and they had 20 spots.
I showed up like obviously like when I was testing a lot, it was the first recession. So you're looking at fire departments that are already a giant red stain on the city budget, not wanting to hire, and they were willing to pay overtime over hiring for spots. But I tested in Inglewood, Colorado. That's now, I think Denver gobbled them up. Mm-hmm. And there was, I think, like 400 or 500 people there for 2 positions. Wow. Which those odds aren't very good.
I'm not that good at math,
but especially with recruitment, and I feel like recruitment can go hand in hand with community outreach, because not only can we get out into the community and kind of spread the message, but we can also instill some pretty cool, I want to say like motivation. So one of the things I think that's pretty neat is the Army went in like 2009 and overhauled how they did basic training, because they were having a huge attrition rate. And they're like, hey, like, again, we need souls to fill this machine. So they sent the positive psychology department from Penn University down and trained all the DIs in like master resiliency. So one of the pillars of that is character strength development. There's a huge piece of internal motivation is operating within your personal strengths and what makes you happy. So if you learn how to optimize your own character strengths, you have internal drive all day long. That's why things that you enjoy to do, you don't mind doing them, right? Wow. Because you're good at it, and it's one of the things that you're strong with, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't know what your weaknesses are, but you shouldn't operate in a world of your weaknesses, because it's something that you're not good at and you don't enjoy. So you're not going to optimize your own well-being that way. So what we could do as a fire service for recruitment is learn how to utilize character strengths as one pillar of resiliency and go into these communities, especially if we want to do outreach into like disenfranchised and underrepresented communities and instill like hope and optimism and character strength. And then also say, hey, young man or young woman, you've got a character strength theme that would align very well with firefighting. Like that would be a huge, and then we're doing a service as a part of outreach, and we're like, hey, how about in 12 years you put a job application in with us and become one of us because you exhibit a theme that is in line with us.
And my hope once we get to that episode, which I think it's 4 or 5, if I remember correctly, is how do you we need, in my brain there's a sense of urgency because in order to fill the seat can't be empty. Regardless. So once you drop the standard, does it drop too fast for us to be able to grab the right person? Because it's halfway. Some may say, and this is what I hope we get into, is you can take a person, doesn't matter. I give you this person, regardless of what their character strengths are or what motivates them. You make them what you want them to be, rather than us going, hey, you know what? These are the traits that work. Let's develop some sort of assessment, or I'm sure there's some companies out there that we'll dive into that are able to give us a heads up and go, okay, this person may not be an EMT yet. We're going to go ahead and scrap the EMT, but we're going to make sure that the 100 that we do hire fit within this realm so that they are coachable, they are teachable.
Well, that's what the Army did, because they have 3 million, and I'm just guessing, I could be wrong. They have 3 million. The U.S. Department of Defense has 3 or 4 million people that they employ. They're the largest employer in the world. And what they decided to do was, because they can't be selective, right? They need bodies. And so what they figured out was, it doesn't matter what your strengths are. We're going to help you optimize those strengths so that you're efficient, happy, engaged, motivated. You'll have confidence because you're competent. Like, that's kind of the neat thing about learning how to use that. Instead, what we run our academies, and we're not exclusive. We're like every other fire department that runs academies. We run it to how we're paramilitary. We base everything off of an old military tradition, and that's not the way they communicate to people today, right? Oh. That's not, it's not working. They're like, I don't get these young firefighters. It's like, well, they speak a different language. You know what I mean? Like, we have to start speaking that language. And we're not getting bad people. We're just getting people that don't speak the same language as people who are 20 or 30 years older than them. Yeah. So it's just kind of it's just a different perspective on how to manage. And obviously, I don't know how. We talked about this yesterday. Like, if I have to call 911, my expectation is that Superman comes through my door, right? Like, it drives me crazy. I don't want some standard firefighter. You know what I mean? I want somebody who's educated and is physically capable to do the job and is motivated and engaged and happy to be there.
Which is not only what we should do, it's what we signed up and sworn in to do.
We swore an oath to do that.
So that's where. So tools for recruitment.
Yeah.
PT evaluations, academy do's and don'ts, and what we've experienced, our personal experience in dealing with the battle on 3 fronts, as we've called it, dealing with the union, which we're still union members, part of the executive board there for a little bit, dealing with administration, what their concerns are. And then also, believe it or not, floor personnel, which caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Which and maybe some of you out there that are listening or watching this on YouTube, please share your experiences with us. Comments, write us, email us, because it is interesting, and the purpose of all of this and its very, very fundamental existence is to disseminate information.
Yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
once we can just share that you're not alone, and I think we felt that a lot at the conference in San Antonio at the
I mean, that we were, there was others.
Yes.
Yeah.
That it was that feeling of like, we thought it was, people will either go, our union's holding us back, or our admin's holding us back, or, and it really is a battle on three fronts where there's skepticism from one position or two positions in admin, and there's somebody on the floor that's going, hey, I don't care about those weights. I want that rower right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, well, we got a bunch of stuff going on here.
I mean, you're looking at it's either financial, it's policy, or then it's expectation, right? And that's like admin is worried about costs for the most part, right? And implementation, and then the union's worried about policy, and it's just going to cost somebody their job. And then and I don't think there's a lot, but there's some floor personnel who now are going to be held to a standard or expectation who don't want that. They're comfortable. And that's what we talked about earlier is everybody wants to be comfortable. And then when you're challenged, that's when you have resistance, which is funny because our job's not very comfortable, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of times where you go to some new scene and you're not looking around. You know what I mean? Like, we have a very uncomfortable, dynamic job. And for us to be individuals who are just comfortable in general is weird to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it is the maybe it is within the four walls that when the tones go off, I don't know what it is, and I have to constantly be in that state. So I know if I'm within this building, I'm going to try to control everything I can. And then it doesn't, it like going what you were saying, well, there's financial and policy, and looking at it from that perspective, a lot of what we do outside the walls, even though it is uncontrolled and the unknown, a lot of it has a lot of structure to it.
Oh, yeah.
So we were joking the other day in the state, like we have motion sensors in the bay. Like I cannot decide if I want the lights off in the bay. I have to jump around. Yeah. And if I want the lights to go off, I got to be real still for a while. So it's like when you lose control of everything else, my comfort zone may have now shrunk to just my dorm.
Well, that's why I think we have a lot of structure, is because we go to chaos, right? Like, and that's kind of one of the funny things about firefighting, if you think about it, is 1% of the time at work, we're doing what we signed up for. The other 99% of the time, what are we doing? Like looking for some sort of structure, you know what I mean? But when we respond to a fire, we have a very structured way to establish command. We have very structured assignments, even though they're dynamic and they change. We have a structured way of doing things. But what do you do at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we keep busy, we train, we do whatever, but there's no structure to it. Like after you get hired and off probation, do you have a career path mapped out for you? Because the Army does, Wildland does, police do, for the most part.
Yeah.
Like what do you do after your probation?
No.
Yeah, you don't know. You're like
it depends on those leaders that are around you.
100%.
We got really lucky.
We sure did.
And ironically, we were in the same building.
We were.
So it was, and not the same captain, by the way. It was two separate captains that we had worked for, and from just talking to you and now Chief, sat down and
helped me map out a career path, right? And and even still, what do you do? How do you go about that? You find somebody that you're close with, and you're like, hey, what did you do? You know what I mean? And that's, you pick, and it sucks because not everybody has access to somebody who tested well.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What happens is that now you hit the roving trail.
Yeah.
You realize a year or two in, or maybe later, that you go, oh, I have to figure this out. I need to, whether it's my F endorsement or need to, I'm going to teach an academy. I don't even know where to go. So then you call that one captain that you happen to be roved in with that one cycle that reached out. So that shouldn't be, yes, the captain is a very, if not the most important position within the organization.
For sure.
But if it was built into the organization and you created an ecosystem for individuals to thrive and develop, I think we are onto something here. But and lastly, on that, the own your process. That is, if we've learned anything throughout our research, communicating with other individuals, whether it be fire departments, companies that provide service, you have to own this process. It is not something you can outsource. It is not something that you could put out a job application for, hire someone, check a box, and move on about your day. It is something that must be developed constantly. I want to say be able to have your attention, whether it be weekly, at a minimum monthly, to whether or not you're addressing not only the reactive side of managing the people and developing them, but being able to be proactive and looking to see what technology is out there for preventative measures, and development.
And ownership, ownership gets you engagement, right? Like if we outsourced it, we could just complain about it as something, right? But if we own a process, like we own our own shop, our logistics, our training, our suppression services, our communications department, we own all these different divisions within the fire department. This is and we're not exclusive again. Like this is from Miami to Seattle, right? There's departments that are struggling are actually coming around, but to learn that this kind of comprehensive health and wellness model is essential, right? And that's
which is ironic to me, because if you look at NFPA, which is one of our guiding documents, and you have an HSO that's outlined in 1521, I believe, and then 82 and 83.
83 specifically outlines what a health and wellness coordinator should look like, right?
It's to a T.
Right.
And then your physicals as far as 1582. And we're going to go over all this stuff more in detail next episode, in episode 2. It's written down.
Yeah.
It's not a shock. I could see when you get into the force plates, which we'll talk about with Vald, and the sleep tracking with Oura rings, and adding technology into the world of firefighting that's been used or currently being adopted into the professional athlete world. I can see the skepticism there, but your own documentation supports it.
And I think that we're partial to this, obviously, because we saw how this comprehensive sports medicine model works, right? Yeah. Like I think I would venture to say that a collegiate sports medicine model is even more in depth in overall health and wellness than a professional, because they provide additional resources in like tutors, right? Yeah. You have mandatory study hall, and you have a facility that, like, when I'd wake up in the morning, I would rush over to the facility, work out, eat breakfast, go to class.
When you say the morning, 6 a.m., right?
Yeah, okay. Whatever time.
Course, just so everybody doesn't know.
It's early. It's early for an 18-year-old kid to wake up. Go to class, come back, eat lunch, do PT, watch film, practice, eat supper, go to study hall, go home. Like that was my life, right? Yeah. And they figured out that, hey, if we control where this individual is for a good part of their day, we know we can get training, we can get strength training in, we can get physical therapy, we can get now, and I don't know if we had mental health stuff when I was there. I think that was maybe before the kick, but I know they have it now. I know there's mental behavioral health, sports psychologists for them to meet with. Mm-hmm. They're going to study not only football, which is the reason they're there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you're gonna make sure their grades are up. They're gonna have study hall, and they're gonna have practice, right? And special operators saw that, and they're like, "Wow, we've got a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds also. So special operators are like, hey, we should probably copy this comprehensive sports medicine model, because what a great way to make sure that all these services that we have are provided to our people. Yeah. And then we're going to get into it, but there's departments in the country that have like, wow, we could own that too.
Yep.
And the return on investment in that is there. Like that's the crazy thing is like that little bit of upfront cash pays off huge on the back end.
It's massive.
It's massive.
And I think it just is from those individuals that we will talk about. And hopefully we can get them on and interview them. Bob Stratman out of West Metro, Chief Tolliver out of Phoenix. There's a few of them that had previous experience with professional sports teams, landed in the fire service, and they literally just let them run with it. And they've developed
Trey out of South Metro.
Trey. They've just developed these amazing programs, and each of them independently are on their own machine. They're not identical at all.
No.
South Metro has the staff out of I mean, anybody would want that staff
for
of
sure.
8 or 9 people, and you got coordinators and navigators and physical therapists and sports trainers and and then you got Stratman, who's in West Metro, who's
one man show,
killing it. And you're like, so it isn't a one shoe fits all. It's just decide to own it, change your perspective, and move from there.
Yeah.
And the next thing was, speaking of the subject matter experts that we were going to have on. So we'll move quickly. We'll end each episode with our clip of the week. The clip of the week is going to be information or just some sort of, whether it be speech or TED Talk or something for us to give our opinion on and reflect on outside of the fire service and how it relates to the fire service. So
it's not important that you become a good fighter in this world. And it's not important that you become a good spiritual guide in this world. It's important that you find a way to live a pleasant life, and in the best case, support other people that they also find the same. This is what it's about. No matter in which form you put it and which from cultural background you put it. The main idea is, if you don't find this way of reducing the suffering of your surrounding, your suffering won't stop.
I've watched that probably 50 times. Yeah. And every time it still kind of is one of those, it makes you think. What's it make you think of initially?
So like it really is kind of, in my opinion, like what the model of servant leadership is, right? So like the model of servant leadership is, one, you can't pour a shot from an empty bottle, right? So you have to know who you are. You have to do self-reflection, self-awareness. You have to be authentic in who you are. And then the goal of a servant leader is to provide the ultimate best environment for development and growth and well-being of the people that you serve, right? And that to me is like, when I think of great leaders that I have, that was what they did. Like their work and becoming a captain, you have to realize, and relating to the fire service, becoming a captain, you're no longer the hero. You're no longer pulling the person, putting the fire out, cutting the hole, popping the door. What you do is you take the little bit of authority that the department's given you and you invest it into your folks and provide the greatest environment for them to thrive, right? And that's kind of what I get from that. That and like the little first line, it reminds me of an old saying. It's like, it doesn't matter if you win, it matters if you fight, right? I kind of dig that a lot. That's that drive and that motivation that comes from inside. So that's what I think of. What about you?
I'm not following that. Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. I was thinking so much more on a simplistic view of reducing everyone else's suffering. And just when I hear suffering, there's not just in the fire, just in general, just humanity, that the sense of ownership that is lacking from a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And even me, sometimes I'll own it. There's some times where you reflect on something and you're like, I didn't do what was best there for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think there's a sense, and I don't know, just relating back to the fire service, sorry, my thoughts are a little scrambled, but I don't know if it's just us in the valley because we're growing so much now. But there's this divide where we have a lot of people 19, 20 years on and above. And then there's this like 7-year gap, 8-year gap. And then there's a lot more people underneath. And one would even say we're probably 50-50.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere around there. And it seems like the little things, the well-being, the mental well-being of the department and probably the fire service in general. I don't know. I hope you guys feedback and let us know if this is something that is with everyone. When you're split in half and it's not the couple of senior guys and and scattered about, and there's junior and then the middle of the road. Like, it seems like we're so divided that there's a lot of selfishness that is eating us alive, and we end up caving in on each other, and the suffering is palpable, whether it's switch me stations, whether it's I'm not getting promoted because of whatever reasons, we can't hire, these young guys don't want to test, nobody wants to ride the box, whatever it is that there's this inward fighting that if everyone would just look to looking and providing for others and being that servant leader, because you can lead from any seat.
Yeah.
And doing, okay, what is the best decision in this instance to make everyone happy? And even if that means I'm unhappy, let me try to do what's best. And I feel like that's missing.
And I think you hit it, because I think a big reason why there is a bit of a divide is our physical and mental health has tanked. And so I feel like you get into survival mode at some point, right? To where I feel like there's probably, what do we say, 20% of our fire department is just fine. They're operating well. They can handle all the stresses. They're responsible, whatever. They have all the information they need. Let them just keep working. There's 20% on the bottom who don't care, right? And then there's that 60% in the middle that's just lost and needs some direction. And I feel like when your physical health is deteriorating and your mental health is non-existent, that you can rationalize and justify any action, right? And that's kind of that. You said, I'm going to own it. I didn't make the best decisions for others sometimes. Some people are hurting so bad that they don't self-reflect about operations, and then they're just trying to get to another day. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of where like this comes into place, because if you can eliminate physical pain and hardships, the mental stuff becomes easier, and vice versa. If you can eliminate some mental block that you have, the physical stuff gets easier, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny how the fastest route to improve your mental health is physical exercise, right?
It's funny how that works.
Funny how those two things are linked, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we're in such a terrible physical mental state that people justify any action, and they can just get away with it. And we have a dichotomy in the department too. We've got two different pension plans, essentially. There's guys that have and gals that have different benefits that others don't. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the newer guys and girls keep getting stuff eliminated, keep getting benefits eliminated. And then what's the purpose? You know what I mean? Like, when they look at it, they feel shortchanged. But the senior guys are like, well, this is what I did when I was in those shoes. Yeah. And so you're like, I mean, like, it's a different set of shoes at this point.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
the services provided are different. We've doubled in size. We've got,
And so your benefits are different. There's guys that are leaving right now that are going to make more in retirement than these young guys are going to.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Young. I keep saying guys. I mean, our young firefighters. Like, they're so like you're looking at it like they're like, why should I help you out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they're like, why aren't you helping me out?
Oh God. And it being me being a legacy kid, it's like, are you crazy? Like, can you imagine if we put your dad on and you're like that? I just, again, is reducing the suffering for all.
For sure.
And if you can really look at it from a standpoint of what is best for everyone. Right. And that's something that's going to be hard to change. And hopefully with what we've started, and the information we're able to get out, I hope that that we can help. If this helps one person or one crew or one department, my job is done.
Yeah.
I just truly think that there's just that missing piece, because it's not a gap. Like those of us that are stuck into education and addicted to growth, kind of where you just maintain.
It's a love of learning.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, but it does seem like there is an aha moment, and I hope that's what we're able to generate.
For sure.
So with that being said, that is 48 minutes already.
Man.
We said we were going to do 30 to 45.
We'll cut 3 minutes out.
Well, yeah, we'll edit somewhere in there. But thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, appreciate you.
Bye.